Hey everyone, I'm in a different room right now, so you know what that means. Basketball. I was gonna do this outside, but it got really cold. You know, I was going to ask my roommate if he wanted to hoop and ball out with me, but it seems like he has more important stuff to do. Anyways, I love basketball, but you know what I love more? The band Black Midi. So let's talk about it. Three-pointer.
Black Midi is a band from London, England.
Gross.
Yeah, I know it's despicable, but hey, we're gonna give these Brits a pass this time. They make good music for Christ's sake. The main members of Black Midi consist of Cameron Picton on bass and synths, Morgan Simpson on drums, Jordy Greep on guitar, and Matt, I'm not even gonna attempt to say that last name, also on guitar. Plus, I'm pretty sure all of them have done some degree of vocal work for the band, maybe with the exception of Morgan, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyways, Black Midi, what the f do they do? Well, they make rock music, but specifically they dabble in experimental rock, math rock, noise rock, and even some avant-prog and jazz rock on their newest album at the time of this video, Cavalcade. Isn't that neat? But whenever you just list off a bunch of subgenres, it doesn't really explain the energy that the music radiates. I think if I had to describe the tunes made by this band, I would use two words: chaotic perfection.
Holy fucking shit, that's the title of the video. That's pretty baller.
Alright, seriously though, this shit is fucking crazy. They had released their debut single, BM on the Speedy Wonderground label back in June of 2018, but the group didn't get much widespread attention until January the next year when their KEXP performance of 5 songs from their then untitled upcoming album was posted on YouTube. Almost immediately, every single white music nerd on the internet watched a video and collectively said at the same time, hey, this is kinda cool? And yeah, they were right, it was kind of cool. Some of the first things people pointed out about this performance, besides the fact that the dudes in this band all look like grade schoolers, was just how technical, surreal, heavy, and batshit insane the music was here. Oh, and that the drummer is absolutely incredible. Morgan Simpson is a god on drums. By the end of the video, that'll be very apparent. Anyways, in the comment section of the KEXP performance, a lot of people were trying to compare Black Midi's sound to the stylings of other bands. For example, there was one comment I found that said, "This sounds like if Talking Heads tried to cover Endless Nameless." Another comment read, "I can feel a strong Captain Beefheart energy in their performance." But my personal favorite comparison has to be from the one person who said, "They're like the Shags except they know what they're doing." I bring all these comparisons up because it leads me to the point that I think fellow music enjoyer Rick DeLay said best on his Rate Your Music review for Schlagenheim, where he pretty much explained, hey, for a band being compared to 15 other groups, maybe they're a bit more unique than you're giving them credit for. Yeah, not only do I think Black Midi is one of the most one-of-a-kind and bold bands in the scene right now, but screw it, I'm gonna say it. Black Midi has legit just become my favorite band. Period. At the moment, they are the only musical act that I have given every single one of their albums a 10 out of 10. And sure, you may say, but Luke, they only have 2 albums out right now. And my response to that is this: I don't care! They're 2 for 2, motherfucker! Both of these albums are perfect.
Now you may be one of those people that are like, ugh, nothing can technically be perfect, as anything ever made inherently has flaws. You.
So yeah, let's talk about Black Midi. We're mainly gonna focus on the music and how I feel about it, but I'll also try to briefly discuss the band's history as well as some other stuff about the group that I feel isn't as talked about as it should be. And with that being said, let's start with the band's debut. Damo Suzuki live at the Windmill Brixton with Sound Carrier's Black Midi?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, before we talk about their debut album, Schlagenheim, I thought it'd be good to look at all the things Black Midi released beforehand, including this release, Damo Suzuki live at the Windmill Brixton with Sound Carrier's Black Midi. You know, I was partially joking a bit ago when I said this was their debut album, but I mean, it's an album, a live album, but still an album nonetheless. And it's technically the band's first official release, even if it's only up on Bandcamp. So sure, in a sense, it is technically their debut, but in a much truer sense, it's totally not at all, so choose wisely, dad. Anyways, I listened to this project and thought it was pretty cool. The whole live album was essentially just Damo Suzuki vocally riffing for almost 40 minutes with Black Midi doing their thing for the instrumental. You can even hear some early interpretations of guitar riffs found on tracks like Reggae and Years Ago off of Schlagenheim, which is kinda interesting. Pretty much it's just some noisy, improvisational jam band stuff. Nothing more, nothing less. I think if you're as big of a Black Midi fan as I am, this is definitely something worthwhile to check out, but at the end of the day, it's really not that important if you listen to it. Honestly, I think the biggest appeal to this release is the ability to read the title and say, oh shit, the Can Guy and Black Midi did a thing together? Let's move on to talk about some non-album singles the band released before their real debut album, Schlagenheim. There's only 2, so this should be quick. Crow's Perch is an interesting track instrumentally, as you have these staticky bass lines and guitar riffs that are present throughout the entire cut, and of course the drums on this thing are crazy technical per usual. Weird time signatures, sudden tonal shifts, and of course Jordy Greep's bizarre vocals. This is the first time I've mentioned Greep's vocals at all, so let me explain them here. They're fucking weird. Most of the time in any Schlagenheim era Black Midi song, you can usually hear Greep yelping in a high-pitched voice, shouting nonsensical gibberish, making generally weird noises with his mouth, and overall sounds Shakespearean in a way. That might be the widest thing I've ever said, but fuck it, I accept myself. But yeah, this song is not an exception to his very theatrical, over-the-top performance style, as he does exactly what I described during the entirety of Crow's Perch. As for what Greep is saying, this is a good point to also explain Black Midi's lyrical content. This band has some really surreal lyrical content. Even whenever a track has a clear story or central theme, it's told in a super Shakespearean way, like I said earlier. The imagery in the song will be super out there, and sometimes the band members will literally just say gibberish Polish that doesn't translate to actual English. They've done that a couple times. Despite the lyrics being kind of hard to decipher at points, I'll still give my best shot at figuring out what each song is talking about, and Crow's Perch is no exception. So, what do I think Crow's Perch is about?
I don't fucking know.
Onto my overall thoughts of the song, I think it's a pretty run-of-the-mill Schlagenheim era Black Midi cut, but I am happy they didn't include this song on the final album. I much prefer the material that landed on the final release compared to this song here. This same belief applies to the other non-album single, Talking Heads, but I'm a lot more enthusiastic about this cut than I am Crow's Perch. In fact, I like it a lot more than Crow's Perch. The high energy, the sick-ass switch-ups, Greep and Cameron going back and forth vocally, and the drums. Oh my god, the drums. Again, Morgan Simpson is a god. This song is fucking awesome. As for these lyrics where Greep is talking about a disappearing tongue and tearing off cellophane, what do I think it all means?
I don't fucking know.
Anyways, even though I love this song, I understand why it didn't make the cut for the album. The vibe of this track does not match the one on Schlagenheim at all. The same goes for Crow's Perch too. That's one thing I think Black Midi is amazing at doing, and that's cutting unnecessary tracks from a final project. I don't care if the album is 10 songs or 2 songs. As long as there is no fat that brings down the project as a whole, I'm fine with a shorter track list. And sure, it would have been cool to see Talking Heads on Schlagenheim, but if it was on the track list, would I have given that album a 10? I don't think so. So big thank you to Black Midi for knowing when to make certain songs B-sides and leave them off of an album, and a double thank you for not releasing them in the future as bonus tracks on a deluxe edition. I can't explain why now, but deluxe editions will forever be my biggest pet peeve.
Now that we're done talking about all that, we can finally talk about their debut album, Schlag on My Knob.
The album kicks off with the track 953, which starts pretty unsuspecting, just a simple 4-note distorted guitar riff until suddenly
Whoa, hold up. What the fuck just happened?
I'm not sure, Luke, in real life, but it was cool, so we're talking about it. This was the perfect choice for an opening track. It immediately grabs the listener, kicks them in the goddamn balls or the crotch area where they would have balls if they had them, and then says to them, "Hey, motherfucker, we just kicked you in the goddamn balls or the crotch area where you would have balls if you had them, and now we're starting the goddamn album, idiot." On top of that, this track shows off everything Black Midi and this album have to offer for the next 43 minutes. 953 shifts from loud, chaotic jam sessions to calming atmospheres, and then right back to even louder and even more chaotic jam sessions. It's very manic, unhinged, deranged, and some other synonyms too. But at the same time, it sounds totally planned and coordinated, like some sort of controlled chaos, if you will. As for the lyrical content here, Jordy seems to be talking about religious practices and the absurdity of the idea of sinful thoughts and getting rid of said thoughts. As he sings on the first verse, "Please remove these thoughts. Please remove them from your mind, for they are a disgrace to yourself and your family." He could be talking to anyone here, but because Greep sounds like he's having a mental crisis on the entire album, I like to think he's talking to himself. Anyways, 953 is a kick-ass opener and a perfect way to start this album. But before I move on to talk about the rest of the record, I want to point out one cool thing about this song. You might have just asked, but Luke, why is this song titled 953? Well, dear viewer, thanks for asking. It's actually in reference to the math rock section about 3/4 way into the track. I really loved this section when I first heard it, but I can never put my finger on when they would stop hammering on the same riff to do a cool little switch up. That was until I counted out the pattern they were doing. You see, they start this section off by playing this 3-note pattern. Yeah, that one. They play this pattern 9 times until they do this switch up. Yeah, that one. Then they play the pattern 5 times, do the switch up, play the pattern 3 times, do the switch up one last time, and finally they go into a jumbled clusterfuck that is the outro. So essentially they're playing this 3-note pattern 9 times, then 5 times, then 3 times, thus the title 953. This is just so cool to me. It's one of my favorite tiny details about this cut. It's one of those things that whenever you notice it, you say to yourself, huh. Am I right or am I right?
I guess you could say that's a real slam dunk. They're not funny anymore, I'm sorry.
The second track, Speedway, is a nice cooldown from the monster that is the opener. It has a much more subdued energy all around, and compared to the rest of the album, this is easily one of the most calm moments here. The guitars on this track are very repetitive, but not to a fault, as they allow you to put more of your focus onto the drums, which are super groovy and even have a little jazz flair to them. I just really appreciate how the band allows Morgan to improvise on the drums during this cut and do whatever he wants. It gives the song such a life of its own that you really get sucked into. In fact, a lot of this album was created through improvisation according to the band, so neat. As the track treks along, there's this sense of tension that grows bigger and bigger as more complex guitar riffs and sounds are added to the mix and the drumming gets even jazzier and even more chaotic. This anticipation of a drop keeps building the further you get into the song, but it just never happens. Honestly, I prefer the track this way. I think it's perfectly fine the way it is, and while a drop could have been cool, I personally think that this growing stress gives the cut a lot more flavor. As for the vocals and lyrics, the bassist Cameron Picton takes a stab at it this time, where he decided to sing about buildings and cars, I guess. A lot of the time when Cameron does a vocal performance on a Black Midi song, his lyrics are less verses and more so tiny phrases he just says sparingly. Like, it's very rare you'll hear him say more than 5 words in a row without pausing for a breath. Alright guys, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the third song, Reggae, is not reggae music. I repeat, it is not reggae music.
They fucking lied to us all!
This song is just as all over the place as 953, but it's a lot shorter, so the transitions from one section to the next are a lot more abrupt and disorienting. I feel like I'm losing my mind every time I hear this track. It's like my brain melted and now I'm just a husk filled with math rock and chaos for some weird reason. I also love how theatrical Jordy is on this track, especially the part where he's like, he's got a coat of 9 tails and fresh of the shoes straight from the cow, I tell you, straight from the cow. It's super memorable and the perfect amount of weird and outlandish. I love it. Then the next song, Near Detroit, Michigan, starts off immediately with a fast-paced guitar riff, energetic drums, and an abrasive attitude that punches you in the fucking face. Then, almost as soon as the track begins, it fades into a soft, almost Slint-inspired passage that allows Cam to hop on the mic again. This time talking about the water crisis in Flint, Michigan. Just like on Speedway, there's this overwhelming sense of impending doom that plagues the cut. But unlike that song, there's actually a drop here, and oh my god, it is insane. The track explodes into this wall of madness and Cameron is screaming his head off, yelling, "There's lead in the water! There's lead in the water!" Then after he's done, the song becomes complete mayhem, getting noisier and noisier until the abrupt ending. This song is so goddamn cool. It's able to do so much in such a short amount of time. The amazing kickoff, the tense build up to the crescendo of the track, the deep dive into madness, and then a return to form back to how we started, all in just 2 minutes and 20 seconds. It does what it does perfectly, and it's probably my favorite track off of Schlagenheim. A lot of moments on this album can be the musical equivalent of someone's mental sanity finally snapping, and this song captures that flawlessly. The midpoint of this record, Western, is probably the first true moment of bliss with an absolute gorgeous guitar line that starts and finishes the song. Of course, this 8-minute cut wouldn't be a Black Midi track if there wasn't some sort of moment of chaos, so around the 135 mark, there's the most abrupt tone change on the record, which the first time I heard it scared the absolute shit out of me. The guitars on this track fittingly sound like they come straight out of a Western film, with the calmer ones that bookend the song sounding like the background score of a scene filmed at a back porch of a house stuck in the middle of a desert, and the more chaotic ones heard in the middle portion sounding like the score to an intense chase scene on horseback. Greeb's back on the mic, and he's back to talking about the weirdest stuff ever. Like, I looked at the Genius page for this song, and people tend to think he's talking about cutting off a toxic relationship, and if that's what it's about, cool, but with surreal ass lyrics talking about 6 anorexic children and whatever the Anteater Town is, I have no goddamn clue on how to decipher these lyrics. Other than that, great song. I give it a 2 out of 10. The 6th song, the pseudo title track, of Schlagenheim is another scattered but carefully crafted song filled with building tension, walls of noise, math rock, soft rock passages, and of course, Jordy Greep losing his fucking mind. That's mainly what I want to talk about on this song. Greep going insane. Something about this album I don't hear many people discuss is how Greep vocally becomes more unhinged from one track to the next. At the beginning of the record, while he has a super odd vocal style, he's just singing like he normally would, but the further down the track list you go, the more Greep starts to lose it. More surreal lyrics, more weird vocal inflections, and even more unintelligible screams. For Christ's sake, that's even the official lyric on Genius. Maybe I'm thinking too deeply about this album, but maybe Greep is playing a character on this record, and slowly over time, the chaos that surrounds him, aka the music, drives him closer and closer to insanity until he eventually snaps. I don't know, I'm just guessing here. Anyways, amazing song. It's super engaging, and the car revving noises at the tail end of the cut were a super nice touch. Anyways, after a transition from the previous track, we get to the band's first ever single and arguably their most well-known song, BM BM BM. You know, the one with the yeah, that one. Most people I've talked to about Black Midi in this album tend to think this is one of, if not the most accessible song from the album and a great starting point for getting into the band. Of course, now that Cavalcade is out, this is definitely not their most accessible song, but at the time, most people thought it was. And I gotta be honest, I have just never understood that in the slightest. Like, sure, the song is very simple. It's literally just one guitar note and Greep saying, "She moves with a purpose," over and over again. So yeah, I agree, it's simple. But like, that's not even taking into consideration the background vocals where it's just some very high-pitched woman that's drenched in reverb ranting about God knows what. And don't even get me started about the ending. A couple times in the song, you'll hear these loud and sudden instrumental freakouts where a ton of synths flash in, the drums speed up, the bass and guitar lose all focus of whatever they were doing, and everything turns to madness for literally just 1 second for it then to immediately go back to the same sound. This teases towards a crazy freak out at the end of the track, and oh my god, does that freak out show up. This ending is the heaviest, most earth-shattering, mind-numbing section on the entire record. It is fucking insanity. That doesn't even mention the fact that at this point, Greep has completely lost his shit and is totally screeching into the microphone. I think the audio literally clips at one point. This part is absolutely mind-blowing. But you know what I've never said after listening to this track?
Damn, I gotta show my mom this.
Nothing about this is accessible, and in my opinion, it's definitely not the most accessible on the record. I would definitely recommend someone near Detroit, Michigan or Western for an accessible track over BM BM BM. Either way, this is an outstanding song, and I'm happy it's their most popular, but I thought I would just spend this time talking about why I don't think it's as accessible as others think. So yeah, good song, 4 out of 35. The second to last track years ago feels more like a transitional song between BM 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 and the closer, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hit just as hard as the rest of the track list. I love the pulsating fuzzy bass line here. I really dig the scattered guitars and drums throughout the cut. Easily though, the star of this thing is Matt on vocals for the first time. And oh my god, he sounds manic. This guy's going crazy! Seriously though, Matt is probably ruining his throat for the rest of his life while also saying some of the most out there stuff we've heard on this album so far. They tried to cut me with a chainsaw? I drowned my own son in a river? Ba 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 ba?
Really insightful stuff.
Finally, Ductor, the last track on this roller coaster of an album. The main guitar line on this cut is sick as hell, and oh my god, the drums are so good! Plus, I think the lyrics on this thing are really interesting, especially with how they contrast the actual music. Greep seems to be talking about a verbal argument between a good guy and a bad guy, and how the two of them are just trying to outsmart each other. But for whatever reason, the bad guy's mind games aren't working, and he sort of just looks like an idiot compared to the good guy. Besides, the bad guy definitely would have not won this mental battle anyways, because at the very end of the track, the good guy says to him, "Hey man, you can keep saying whatever you're saying, but first, quit jerking yourself off!"
Insert funny penis joke here.
Besides that, the best part of this song has to be when Greep starts saying the refrain, "But he could not break me." He just says this line over and over again, progressively getting louder and more aggressive until he just finally snaps and starts losing his fucking shit. He's completely lost his mind. He's not even saying anything anymore. He doesn't even sound human. And the music that surrounds him just becomes this monstrous wall of noise. It's mush. It's incomprehensible. It's indestructible. It's the soundtrack of the world crumbling before our very eyes. It's death. It's life. It's everything and nothing all at the same time. And then the next thing you know, it's done. The album's done. It just ends.
God, that album was so good, I made a mess in my pants. Anyways, say, what an album. I sure do wonder what's next for the band. My main guess is a lot of spoken word and poetry for some weird reason. Just a hunch.
After the release of Schlagenheim, the band sort of just did what they wanted. They went on tour, and around November, they released the track 7-11, a B-side from Schlagenheim that was originally only available to hear as a hidden track at the end of the full album stream on YouTube. This is post-rock through and through, but to get specific, there's also elements of spoken word and even alternative country. Cam tells a story over a very lush instrumental about how he was going to a 7-Eleven when a blind man told him that the world is dangerous and he needs to be careful. Cam says something like, "Sure, whatever. Have a good one, buddy." Then he leaves the 7-Eleven, and when he's about to get in his RV, he gets hit by a truck. Amazing storytelling. I get why this song was left off of Schlagenheim, as it doesn't really sound like the rest of the album at all, and Ductor is a much stronger finish, but it's a cool cut regardless. 2 thumbs up from me. The last thing released by the band in 2019 was on Christmas Eve with a remix of BM 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 made by the Japanese experimental hip-hop group Dos Monos. As you could have probably guessed, I don't speak Japanese, so I don't really know what the f they're saying, but if I had to make an educated guess, this is what I think they're saying.
What's up, guys? It's me, Dos Monos. Have you heard of Japan? That place is crazy.
Entering 2020, the group didn't release anything major, but a few notable singles and compilations did come out. To start, on January 9th, the group released maybe their most important song to date. Ed Sheeran Send Part 1?
What?
Yeah, I'm already 13 pages into the script. Might as well talk about this shit too. So, to my knowledge, Black Midi decided out of nowhere to make a diss track on Ed Sheeran, one of the most popular pop and singer-songwriter artists of today. Posted it to both their Bandcamp and SoundCloud pages, and then took it down just a few hours later. And it's not like this thing is lost media or anything. Like, there are plenty of reposts of it on YouTube, and Anthony Fantano literally did a fucking track review for it just a few days later. So, you can still hear it. I'm just so baffled that this even exists, because holy fuck, this is peak comedy. Obviously, this is a joke song. It's pretty easy to understand that off of first listen. To start, the mix sounds like I compressed an already finished song on Audacity and then released that new version with the filter instead of the old version. Secondly, there's even a video online of them recording vocals for the song on Instagram Live, and it is so funny.
Oh my god, do you know what I'm saying? 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 Ah!
Hey, that's hot, man, killer. That's sick. That's sick. Hey, come on.
Yeah, did you say I said, oh, did you say I said, oh, said she said. Oh my god, that was so hot. Yeah, vibe stream today. Hey, 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 hey.
And finally, they don't even start dissing Ed until you're 4 minutes deep into the track, which makes this so-called diss a million times funnier. And whenever they do start dissing Ed, it's so over the top and blunt. Ed Sheeran sucks, you sellout ginger prick, your music is doo-doo.
My name's Ed Sheeran. Look at me in my jeans and white t-shirt with my acoustic guitar plugged into my loop pedal.
They even go far enough to tell a most definitely fake story about how Morgan and Ed met once. Remember that time at the windmill when you took my shit? When you took my drumsticks? Yeah, fuck you! Aside from the tone and lyrical disses, this isn't even rock music. It's straight up just weird electronic house and club synths with a hip-hop flair to them. It's just so amazing.
So yeah, this is one of, if not the most brutal diss track I've heard in my entire life. Thankfully, Ed just released a new album, so let's all check it out and see if he responded to the band. He didn't say anything!
As much as I wish they ended their career off with that phenomenal diss track, Black Midi decided to keep making music afterwards, which I mean, cool, I guess. At the beginning of February, they released Sweater, an 11.5-minute long experimental-free improvisational piece. This honestly reminds me of a slower, more ominous and spacey version of what they did on that project with Damo Suzuki that I talked about earlier. While it's not one of my favorite things the band has put out, as I think the song kind of carries on for a tad bit too long, I think it's still a worthwhile listen. This foreboding atmosphere that the group creates instantly grabs your attention, and right whenever you think you've been lulled into a state of serenity, around the 5-minute mark, the track just explodes and jump scares the hell out of you. The further down the track you go, the noisier and more improvisational the track gets as the band starts incorporating other sounds into the piece. But guys, I gotta be honest with you, for me personally, the highlight of this thing is when Greep says Fortnite. Anyways, it's a cool song, and maybe you'll like it more than I do, who knows. Plus, Injury Reserve sampled it for the amazing and soul-crushing song Knees off of By the Time I Get the Phoenix, so that's pretty cool too. In March 2020, they dropped a live album titled Black Midi Live in the USA on their Bandcamp, where I assume they played live music in the USA. I don't know, I didn't listen to it. Now, I made a totally random guess earlier saying that Black Midi would take a stab at spoken word and poetry, and while I was somewhat right with the track 7-Eleven, I was 100% right with a compilation they released in June of 2020 titled The Black Midi Anthology Volume 1, Tales of Revenge and Suspense. So yeah, take that, David. You know who you are. Fuck you. So yeah, this little compilation is made up of 2 sides. Side A is 4 short stories and poems read by members of the band. Those stories being A Woman's Confession by Guy De Who Is to Pay by Robert Out of Season by Ernest and Hot Frog by Heart and the Floorboards Guy. Side B is mostly the instrumentals that could be heard in the background of the readings on side A, as well as a few sections not heard yet on the record. Both of these sides make up for about 2 hours of music, so if you decide to buy this thing on Bandcamp, you will be getting your money's worth. As for what I think about this release, it's good, I enjoy it. I don't think I'll return to it often, but it's good nonetheless. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing I outright dislike on this entire project. In fact, everything here is top quality stuff, and the instrumentals on side B are just kick ass. It's just so long. For half of it to be instrumentals that I've already heard before, albeit under a bunch of English dudes reading poetry over it, I don't really feel that it's necessary to have to listen to this project front to back. I will say, if you're a high school English teacher and really want the guy that said Fortnite on Sweater to read your class some Edgar Allan Poe, there's the perfect song for you, and it's track 4. And of course, how could we forget about the Christmas Covers EP that wasn't even released on their official Bandcamp and instead on the Windmill Brixton Bandcamp page, so like barely anyone knows that this is a thing. How could anyone forget about that? So yeah, Black Midi had a pretty all over the place 2020. Reading poems, dissing Ed Sheeran, and making a Jingle Bell Rock cover. Really intense stuff. However, at the beginning of 2021, people questioned what the band's future would be, as they announced over social media that Matt was taking an indefinite hiatus from the group due to mental health issues. As much as it sucks that Matt will be away from the band for a while, and maybe even for good, I just hope that whatever decision he makes is the best one for him, and I hope he's doing well for himself. Anyways, with Matt gone, people had to ask, what will Black Midi do now? And immediately following this question, the band answered with this.
Well, saxophones are cool, I guess.
So while the band was on tour in early 2020, they decided to add on Seth Evans and Kaidi Akinabi as touring members to make up for Matt's absence, with Seth on the keys and Kaidi playing the sax. While these early shows weren't fully progged out yet, it was pretty obvious to everyone that attended these shows that Black Midi was experimenting with their sound a little bit. Of course, as we all know now, this experimentation led the band to flip their sound almost completely. In the past, they were just some random improvisational noise rock band, but now they're sort of like that still, but with a Frank Zappa mustache taped on their faces. Seemingly, I think this is most apparent with Black Midi's first release of 2021, the double single John L. / Despair. Now, I'll cover John L. once we get to Cavalcade, but just know this. As of now, this is the band's least accessible song. I will debate anyone on that fact. It's out there, avant-garde, and straight up haunting. I would not recommend showing this to a girl on the first date.
I'm just kidding. If you listen to Black Midi, you're not going on dates. I'm not joking.
As for Despair, this is one of Black Midi's most approachable songs yet. For Christ's sake, I can imagine this track landing next to a Rex Orange County song on one of those music to listen to in your bed at night playlists on Spotify. The group goes full art rock on this one, with some absolutely gorgeous guitar passages, soft drums throughout, and even some string arrangements. And, oh my god, Greep sounds normal? Well, not really, but it's more normal than before. He still sounds very theatrical whenever he sings, but now he sounds like he's the lead of the play rather than the side character that just had a brain aneurysm on stage. His voice is genuinely beautiful, and that's something I don't think I would have said back in 2020. If Schlagenheim era Greep was a dude that had lost his grip on reality, Cavalcade era Greep is his older, more mature brother that works a 9 to 5 on the weekdays. Anyways, this double single was a gateway into what the band had in store for the future, and for anyone that thought the prog-infused John L. was just a phase, they released Slow Loud a month later. God, that guy must have felt like an idiot. Slow Loud was the second official single for their next album, but instead of releasing the album mix on streaming services, they decided to drop this louder mix of the track, which was kinda interesting. This track also came with a music video and a brand spanking new KEXP performance. I forgot to mention that John L. also released with a music video, but fuck you, Slow is the better video. But what I really want to talk about here is the 2021 KEXP at home performance. This is the best one. This is the best KEXP gig ever. I even got Lewis from Black Country New Road, damn it. To put it simply, I was floored when I heard this. I just looked around my room in disbelief, saying to myself,
It was okay.
that being Sugar/Zoo. I was really sad to figure out that this song didn't make the final album because holy shit, this is one of my favorite ones from the entire performance. I know it's gonna be on their third album probably, but I'm impatient. I want it now. The melodic arpeggios, the speed, the killer outro. I love it. I need it. But yeah, this performance, absolute perfection. So with my excitement cemented, I was beyond ready for Cavalcade to drop in less than a month. The band dropped the third single a week before the album came out, that being Chandra Malaysia Patella, and then finally, on May 26, 2021, the sophomore effort from Black Midi, Cavalcade, was finally released to the world. It was only 8 tracks, 42 minutes, and dense as hell, so let's talk about it.
Let's get this shit over with. This video is way too long.
The album kicks off with a bang with the track John L., the lead single to the project, and oh my god, this was a ballsy choice for the lead single to promote this album, as at the time, this track sounded nothing like the band had previously released. The days of post-punk and noise rock were behind the group, and instead they were embracing the sounds of avant-prog, spearheaded by acts like the previously mentioned Zappa and Henry Cow. Not only that, but whenever bands are looking for a lead single for their next album, they try to pick something, you know, shareable. You'd be hard pressed to find me showing my chemistry professor this song. Okay, yeah, but what the hell is happening in the song? The best way I can describe this track is, if Schlagenheim was the sonic equivalent of watching a man lose his mind, John L. is the sonic equivalent of what is happening inside of that man's mind. This cut is absolutely massive. Everything about it is so layered and complex. Aside from Morgan's drumming sounding just as technical and good as it has before, everything else sounds off kilter in a way. The saxophone is screeching in your ear, the strings sound super sour and dissonant, the piano on the song isn't even playing chords or anything, it's just Seth slamming his hands onto the keys. And don't even get me started about that main guitar riff, which is just so silly. I'll tell you what's not silly though, these lyrics. The band describes this song as a black comedy, but personally I don't really find the song to be that funny. Of course, I'm not talking about the live versions of this song because those are absolutely fucking hilarious. No, I mean the studio version of this track. The story described in this opener is one of John 50, the leader of an unnamed kingdom and or cult. He walks through Main Street and many people, presumably members of this city and or cult, start to create a crowd. He gets to some of the ending, the crowd rushes the stage and most likely kills him. John 50 fucking dies. Thanks, genius, for the help. One little note about the lyrical content on this album, it's a bit different from how Black Midi would write their songs in the past. While in the past the band did occasionally write stories into their tracks, they were told in such a loose, freeform, and odd way to where you couldn't really fully comprehend the words being given to you. But from Cavalcade onward, the band seems to focus on telling straightforward character pieces on their tracks, following a tale of one person or multiple. They're still told in a super theatrical way, but stuff like the gibberish Polish and Greek Creep squealing are pretty much gone. Speak of the devil, all these lyrics are being delivered to us by none other than Creep himself. But instead of screeching it at us like he would before, he introduces this new spoken word delivery that we haven't heard. It's super deadpan and dry, and also sounds like he's trying to speak in Old English? In a way? I don't know, that's how I describe it at least. It took a bit to get used to this just because I was so accustomed with his older vocal style, but I gotta say, I really like what he went for here. It's super different, but it's still distinctly Creep. Plus, I feel like whenever he does this spoken word style, it puts a lot more emphasis on what he's saying. So overall, John L is a twisted, multi-layered opener that lets you know that you're in for something special. But after such a difficult track to digest, what would the band give us next? Well, how about a straight up ballad? Yeah, immediately following what I would call Black Midi's weirdest song yet, the band delivers their most straightforward song yet with Marlene Dietrich. This track is something I thought I would never call a Black Midi song, and that's Blissful. This thing starts off pretty whimsical with these strumming guitars and simple strings, but it just blossoms into this cacophony of beauty. Seriously, you'll be hard pressed to find another song from 2021 that sounds this gorgeous. Greep's back on the mic yet again with a new singing style, this time sounding very rich and even professional, far away from how he sounded on Schlagenheim. He talks about the old actress Marlene Dietrich having a very bittersweet performance in front of a crowd who seems to not be very impressed. Of course, these lyrics don't match the sound here at all because, oh my god, I am blown away about how free-flowing and pretty this song is. This cut shows just how versatile this band really is, and many others down the track list will show the exact same thing. Side tangent, but whenever people ask about Black Midi and what they sound like, I like to recommend they listen to this song first and then John L right after, mainly because I'm a psychopath. Right after the stunning Marlene Dietrich, we're thrown right back into the insanity with Chandra Malaysia Patella. It has this groove that really settles you back into the whacked out prog rock that kicked off the record. And whenever we get into the core of the track, it sounds like the band's new, jazzier take on BM at points, with just some added saxophone. There's some really calm and atmospheric jazz rock and mass sections on this cut too, but you forget all about it as soon as the instrumental freak out that serves as an outro hits your eardrums. Also, a nice touch to end the song with a slide whistle. Very funny, guys. Greep's singing again. I gotta be honest, I'm not sure what he's saying here, but there's a part in the song where it sounds like he's saying sussy bussy boy, so that's kind of funny, I guess. On to the fourth track, and my favorite off of the album, Slow. Now that I think about it, I think I would just call this my favorite Black Midi song, period. I find everything about this to be masterful. And on top of that, the music video, chef's kiss. Intense and bitter. So yeah, the sound of this cut is stellar, but what about the lyrics? Well, Cam is on the mic for the first time on this album, and while he sticks with a very simplistic delivery style, he says a lot with a little. The songwriting here seems to be about a person who is waiting for life to end, whether that's for everyone or solely for themselves. They wish that life wouldn't crawl by so slowly, as the lyrics explain over and over again, and instead they want life to stop abruptly. Of course, this doesn't happen as quickly as the narrator wishes, so reluctantly they decide to just wait. But at the tail end of the track, the narrator is, quote, shot between the eyes, either by some random person or maybe sadly themselves. Either way, this being how the lyrics end matches with the chaotic ending to this track so much and secures it as my overall favorite.
Hey, you guys ever played Minecraft?
Diamond stuff.
Ha! That's funny.
The fifth song on Cavalcade acts as the calm within the storm, landing right in the middle of the track list and easily being the most lush track here. The focus here isn't on lyrics, even though Cam does say a few lines about diamonds and whatnot. Instead, its focus is the progression that this track follows, allowing it to build and flourish into one of the most jaw-dropping moments of artistry on the entire record. This song feels like I'm floating in the sky, staring down at a decimated city, or exploring a passageway inside of a massive cave system. It's really a special moment on the record and a much needed cool down after the mostly chaos that is the first half of this thing. Speaking of chaos, Dethroned. This song is nuts! I first heard it on the KEXP at home. For the longest time I thought that this song was a real letdown. That was until I realized I was being fucking stupid. This song is still fucking amazing. Sure, the version on the album doesn't have the horns, but the band makes up for this by having the guitar be extremely noisy. In fact, I would say this is one of the only moments on the album where it's a straight up noise rock song, like on their first album, of course with a proggy twist. Plus, the bass line on this, played by Cam, is so sticky. It's been stuck in my head for the last 2 months, I swear to God. Absolutely bonkers. Jordy's voice sounds perfect over this, and I also really like the echo and reverb effects applied to the vocals. The penultimate track, Hogwash and Boulder Dash, follows the story of two convicts running away from the law. To my knowledge, the lyrics sort of focus on the two's misadventures near Salafessian, which is a completely made up place by Greep, kind of like Ghent, Kentucky. I swear to Ghent, Kentucky is not real, and how they're making sure the coast is clear and that the law won't get them. As for how this sounds, imagine every brutal prog section you previously heard on the album, make sure there's absolutely no moment of clarity throughout, and then ramp up the craziness by 1,000. Yep, that's Hogwash and Boulder Dash. For arguably the most dense song on the entire record, it impressively fleshes out and fully realizes so many musical ideas within 2 minutes and 32 seconds. The blaring horns, the sudden change in time signatures at the end, and the use of dynamics, everything here is just so disorienting in the best way possible. Even though this song isn't a favorite for everyone, I think it works perfectly as one final punch in the face before the last song on the album. Speaking of the last song on the album, here it is, Ascending Fourth.
You know, I've always been more of an ascending thirds guy, but hey, opinions.
While I've said the songs Marlene Dietrich and Diamond Stuff were gorgeous and some of the most stunning parts on the album, I take it all back now. This is the most beautiful song they have ever made. While the song is a piece of progressive and art rock, they incorporate so many influences from jazz and classical music into this, with awe-inspiring string arrangements and perfectly placed saxophone. And for this song to be just around 10 minutes long and to never get old once, that is a great achievement. But for this track here, I don't really want to focus on the sound, because at this point of talking about Cavalcade, it's obvious the band can make a song sound pretty. No, instead I want to talk about the lyrics. This song has Black Midi's best songwriting, bar none. The story told on this track is one about artistic expression and the fear many artists have whenever they experiment with their music. The track follows the main character Marcus, who is in the middle of writing a brand new piece. The imagery in this song is phenomenal, with Jordy singing about the tiniest of details, like the air from the open windows hitting Marcus's face, all the way to the sweat that stains his clothes. He seems to be hitting some kind of writer's block as he keeps writing the same repetitive, unoriginal ascending fourths over and over again. He feels as if this repetitive pattern is soulless, and he doesn't feel like he's being able to express himself artistically. In desperation, he tries to think of something, just something, to replace these derivative ascending fourths, until finally he succumbs to how tired he is and falls asleep. Within this dream, it's portrayed that he discovers the perfect musical arrangement that fulfills his artistic desires. So whenever he awakens, he begins to write this newly found music number over every single one of the ascending fourths he had previously written down. Personally, I think this is supposed to be a liberating moment for Marcus. He struggled for so long to find something about his music that felt personal to him, but he just couldn't. But finally, after searching deep in his soul, he found the perfect musical arrangement that represented his artistic vision. Sadly, this story doesn't have a happy ending. Once Marcus shows this new piece to the public, he's mocked. No one likes it in the slightest. He's ridiculed for creating a piece of art that, to the view of the public, is a false showcase of heart and emotion, when in reality, to Marcus, this art meant the world to him. It's the perfect showcase of his heart, put into music form, but no one else but himself seems to take notice. So, in defeat, Marcus begins to put ascending fourths in his music once again, something he knows everyone will like. And he's right. He keeps making the same ascending fourths pattern in all of his pieces, and doing so earns him back into the hearts of the people. He's put in the spotlight once again. He may have gained back the respect of the general public, but at what cost? His art has completely suffered from this, becoming soulless. So, at the end of the day, while Marcus might be praised once again, Black Midi poses the question, is fame worth the sacrifice of your artistic integrity? This is such a bittersweet way to end the album lyrically, as the tale told here is absolutely heartbreaking. But the sound of this track, especially for the last 2 minutes of the song, totally contrasts this idea. This song has the most triumphant and victorious closing to any song the band has ever made. The sound of this closing makes me happy for the future of this band, because I know even though Marcus had to sacrifice his creativity for the spotlight, I don't think Black Midi ever will. I think Black Midi, for the time being, will be able to act upon whatever weird, bizarre, and challenging ideas they have for their music. Because I think for this band, their artistry and originality will be the very thing that ascends them forth into the hearts of the common man. And with that, Cavalcade comes to a close.
Jesus Christ, I got a little sappy there, my bad.
Business is like a waltz. Business is like a grand dance.
So, since Cavalcade came out, the band has made a few things. For many of the bonus vinyl versions of Cavalcade, they came with 1 out of 5 possible flexi discs that had covers. These covers included Moonlight on Vermont by Captain Beefheart, 21st Century Schizoid Man by King Crimson, Love Story by Taylor Swift, Nothing Compares to You by Prince, and a combo of Psycho Killer by Talking Heads and Roxanne by The Police. Even though they aren't on YouTube anymore, there's probably a place online where you can find these. Also, on all of the physical versions of the album, there's an introduction song, so that's neat. Finally, specifically for the Japanese physical release of Cavalcade, the band decided to release 2 bonus songs that previously mentioned Despair and the new bonus track, Cruising. Cruising is a bonus track the band dropped a few months after Cavalcade, and it's obvious that this was supposed to be a B-side from the album, and this era's equivalent to Schlagenheim's B-side 7-Eleven. Of course, this track is much jazzier and proggier than anything from Schlagenheim, but weirdly enough, this track is also post-rock and alternative country, just like 7-Eleven was. Maybe this is gonna be a trend for the band, I don't know. Also, I don't know what the Reap is talking about on this, something about someone named Amapola? I have no clue. And as of me writing this, the last thing Black Midi has released is a YouTube and vinyl only release, Livecade, an EP made up with live renditions of 4 Cavalcade songs, as well as a live version of Despair, so that's pretty cool. Plus the live version of John L on this thing, titled John Hell, simultaneously one of the funniest and most impressive things the band has ever done. But yeah, what's next for Black Midi? Well, for a while now, Greep has been teasing towards a 3rd album that may be coming very soon, currently under the name Hellfire, which is in reference to Hellfire Studios, where they recorded Cavalcade. Now, I don't know if this is actually the name of their next album, because apparently Greep just randomly says Hellfire on his Instagram Live just because he's Greep and that's what he does. So I doubt this is the final name for the project. As for the sound, from some of the live shows I've heard online, I think the group is continuing down this prog direction for the time being, which I for one am totally fine with. Of course, they can do whatever they want, but based off how much I loved Cavalcade, I'm definitely not opposed to hearing more material in that style. So yeah, Black Midi. I still find it mind-blowing that this group of early 20-year-old Twitter posters have been able to hold a grasp on so many people in the music scene. And it's not because they're attractive, because I mean, just look how dreamy they are. No, it's because they make good f***ing music, and most likely will continue to do so for a very long time. This band holds a very special place in my heart. I really hope this way too long of a deep dive has convinced some of you out there to check them out. I said it once at the beginning of this video, and I'll say it again one more time here. Black Midi will go down in history as one of the most off-the-wall and boundary-pushing bands to ever do it. And I'm so happy to be a part of this crazy ride. So yeah, if I had to rate Black Midi's discography so far, I would probably give it a TBE out of 10.
Holy shit, guys, he said TBE. He said the thing. So yeah, after saying all that, I think Black Midi is kinda cool? What? Oh my god! Finally! I've been trying to make this the entire video, and it finally goes in. I don't know how to explain this, but this is Ed Sheeran's fault.